Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest. But before I do that, here's a quote I picked just for this episode. Here we go. Quality in a service or product is not what you put into it. It is what the client or customer gets out of it. Peter Drucker. Today we have a special guest. Actually, Drew Carballo himself, Aces in Places, the man, the myth, the legend. Season 1, episode 6. Believe it or not, I mean we're in the hundreds now. Drew's been an integral part of many restaurant businesses and many businesses in general over the last decade plus, and really just an expert when it comes to understanding how to make something that may or may not be working work. That's my opinion of him. Drew, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Back on the show. I mean, I was re-listening to our episode 6 of season 1. And I guess the first question I have for you is, let's say there's a scenario where the business is in disarray. The ownership's not clear on really the numbers or who's on the boat and who's not on the boat. And you're coming into that situation. What's the first few things you're going to look for to turn that ship around?
Well, I feel it always comes down to two main topics, no matter what industry you're in: food, casino, bar, nightlife. I like to look at it as, the people and the culture. And I don't say that because you're a podcast. I'm just a big believer in the culture you create with the people, then helps figure out the numbers it takes to execute that. And obviously, at the end of the day, every business, it's numbers, right? And, the real results are always shown by numbers, whether it's salary, hourly, cost of goods. But that bottom line is, where we find out the truth of the business. We can say it's going great and the guests love us and the customers, are having the greatest experience, and that's all fine. But, if business isn't executing on that bottom line, it's technically not a profitable business. So those are the first two things I like to look at. And I'm a believer that you can get them to blend, because if you can be communicative and build a really good culture with all of your employees or associates, you can get a lot out of them, see the future, and it lets you manage the numbers in that moment.
I was re-listening to our first podcast, and you were talking about how you like to have people from all different walks of life, not just one type of person, but lots of different people. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, I just like always to mix it up. I don't think, if we're say talking about a restaurant, I never like to consider inside those 4 walls are a restaurant. Like when we're in the 4 walls of the business, we can create it to be whatever we want it to be. And to get to that goal, in my mind, it really comes down to the people and culture that you're building. And if you build a good team, you can run less people, pay them even a little better. You're getting more out of them. They've bought in. They're buying into your message and story. You're executing it. Everybody's happy, and I feel that people just like to read a resume and see, well, where have you hosted before? I don't care if you've never hosted. Can you talk to guests? Can you interact? Can you lead and be hospitable and make a decision? Those are the things that matter. That might be somebody that was a sales associate at Lululemon, or, wants to switch up and start working in the evenings and came from being in a law office. It's the people. You can train them in your best practices and what you want the role to be. I feel like with anything, if they're buying into it.
Do you think there's value in someone coming from a different industry into whatever?
I do, because I like to think that they're not bringing it. It's easier to get them, in my opinion, to buy into your company's way because you're not really even trying to break any old habits. Something that works great at, a restaurant such as John George, might not work at, another branded restaurant of a name chef. What works for John George might not work for Mark Forgione. Both restaurants, both really high-end, well-known chefs with great followings and locations, but it doesn't necessarily mean that execution and culture will come together. So I like to switch it up, and they're usually excited. They buy in. It makes it fun. An eclectic group of people and experiences, and that, in my opinion, reflects off and goes on to the guest, and they get a better experience.
How do you keep people motivated?
Communication, I would say, is the most. I'm not a big emailer. Some people like to have this long weekly manager, minutes sent out. It's all from behind the scenes. I like it all in person, because you then pick up on what that associate or employee, appreciates, enjoys in life. I always have this saying of, we're all here to make money. Like, that's not a bad thing to say. Everyone thinks it's so scary to say. It's okay. People usually work to make money. Now, where they want to apply that money is different. Is it for their school? Is it for them going out to help with their family? Is it their card note? Is it because their real love in life is being an artist and need to buy supplies? Like, wherever you want to apply, that's fine. So if you can pick up on those pieces as well, you get them to execute on the vision you need in the four walls, while also you're connected and interacting with what do they really care and love about in life. And I feel like you get more out of them when there's that connection.
Do you like, how do you approach that? Do you make that an imperative for you to get to know your people in that way?
Yeah, I think it just comes up even from the initial interview, is you're trying to just see how somebody interacts, right? If you get them to talk about themselves and, bring up those aspects, and then you follow up on them, so if somebody's, sister is moving out and it's the first time they're not living together, and 2 weeks later, it's, how was your sister's move? Like, did everything go smooth? Is it weird being in the house now, just you? Are you getting more perks from your parents? Blah, blah, blah. Like, as a joke, but it shows the connection of like, oh, he remembered that. And then, like, when you follow up later and it's like, hey, the menus weren't organized or printed correctly, could we do, people buy in. You're buying into their life. So I feel like they come back and buy into the executed vision that we're going for.
What do you think happens when they're not bought in? What comes of that?
I think it starts to, you can always try to, amend that and make that associate slowly at least execute what you need. I bring a negative set of numbers, right? If you have somebody working a position and they're doing great against somebody that's doing okay, now I got to put somebody else with them who's probably great, who I pay well, and it starts to get a little heavy. And I think that's where the labor aspect then comes into. The numbers show a clear vision of where an issue is. If it's the summertime and you only need one hostess against, the season when you have four, and now in the summer you're running two, so the labor number goes up, you're able to see, why is my labor high for the hostess position? And then you're able to dive in and see, well, there must be an issue there. And there is. Somebody is not carrying the full execution and weight against someone that is. And again, the numbers never lie.
Why do you find that people avoid the numbers, or?
I don't think they avoid. I think people are scared. When you're learning numbers, it's very hard, right? Not everyone's great at math. Not everyone's great or has the access, the ability to build or see a P&L, a profits and loss sheet. And I think that comes down to management where you're more scared to ask questions. I came from a group a long time ago where we did a huge top line sales over 26 million a year, and I wasn't involved in the P&L at all. And then when I went to the next group, they were very P&L oriented with their general managers, but I would ask a lot of questions to the point where it was clear I wasn't involved with the P&L before. Like, hey, you don't know. Let's ask questions. Let's make mistakes. Let's just not make the same mistakes twice. Let's own the mistake, understand it, and move forward. It's the same when there's a negative situation. If somebody's calling me and saying the pipe's backed up, I need, to call a plumber to snake the pipe, and we're in a restaurant. Well, my first question is, okay, when was the last time you emptied your grease trap? And sometimes the managers think I'm, nuts. And it's like, no, there's a clog in the pipe. Yeah, I know. But before we call a plumber and snake it, the real issue might be the grease trap's full and it's just not allowing the water to flow through. So let's just get to the right issue. And then, that's from experience. But now they understand that because they brought it up to me. You're walking them through it. We're paying one or the other person anyway. We want the result to be fixed. So it's not about what was the issues and who's right or wrong. It's just more of like, let's get you to the quickest from A to B quickly, whether we're paying a plumber to snake it or the grease trap people to empty it, instead of paying both, right? And now it took longer, and we made it. We didn't lead and by someone else's experience. And again, that's a connectivity issue. If it was an email, I feel like those questions don't get bounced back as much. Whereas on the phone in 10 seconds, I can bounce it down as an operator and guide the GM through. And again, not only did we get to the result quickly, we got it into a more cost-effective way.
Have you always been a question asker?
I would say so. I mean, I feel that I'm very old school when it comes to, for being a talkative and outgoing person. When it comes to business, I personally like to ask, but I know when the time is. If I'm with my CEO, I know when the time is to speak and not speak. Again, that sounds like a negative aspect to other people, but it's about asking things in the correct time. If we're doing a walkthrough with another hotel group and we're looking at a partnership and my CEO is spieling, it's not my time to ask certain questions. You have to understand it's about timing. It will only get me a better result.
Well, where did you learn that awareness?
I don't know if I could specifically pinpoint it. I mean, I come from a very old school operating type family, nothing to do with restaurants, more of in the insurance world. But I just feel like as I picked up things on my father, like, I was just taught certain things about work, subliminally. Like, to me, work is work. If you could be happy in doing your job, great, amazing world. But in a real world, you're getting paid to do the job. My father used to joke, and he would say I was going to be miserable and rich, and my brother was going to be super happy and just steady, because we looked at things differently. But I think those just slowly add up. And experiences. I've been lucky at a younger part of my career that I have a lot of FaceTime usually with the CEOs I'm with. And I just think picking up on the mannerisms and just reading the room. As much as you could read the room in a situation, reading the room of the leadership around you, and just managing that time correctly keeps you in the room. You know, that line, I'm
Wow.
not the captain of the yacht, but I'm on the boat.
Yeah.
It's understanding what to do when you're on the boat.
What do you think just like breaks up leadership teams, managements? What are some of the elements that you've seen over your lifetime?
I think a lot of people don't lead by example. You know, if you're the director of operations or the, you know, anything, let's say, above a general manager or even a general manager of any business, you know, it's easy to point. You know, I don't like when someone's a pigeon. You know, a pigeon comes in, they shit on everything and they leave, right? I don't mean to say it that way, but think of it as a
Wow, yeah.
visual. It's easy to be a pigeon. It's hard to come in, point, lead, and help. Like, they get the guys through it and let people know they're not alone. If, you know, if it, you know, there's always the division of what someone's role is, a dishwasher versus a food runner. At the end of the night, the dishwashers are running the trash. They obviously want to go home. The quicker they go home, the less hours they work. So that does work for you. But if they start running the trash too early, now guests start seeing the trash leave the restaurant. And then they're there later. Now their culture starts getting negative, right? They want to go home as well. They're probably working a second job. They have family, kids, mother, you know, whatever it may be, appreciating their time. But if you can grab them in that moment and say, I don't want to run this at 10 o'clock, I want to wait till 11. How long does it usually take you? Oh, it takes us 45 minutes. If I can get you other people to help, you think we could get it? If I can get you 5 more guys, can we get it done in 10 minutes? Yes. All right, let's wait till 11. You incorporate some food runners and bussers and a server, whoever, do it as a team, as a collective unit. Now you have 12 people doing something that 2 guys were doing. The result happens quicker. The culture's good for those guys, and it didn't affect the guest. You can only do that if you're leading by example and in it, you know, and if you're bringing those people together and helping them in the moment. You obviously can't be there every night. You have a lot of other responsibilities, but not leaving them hanging goes a long way. Other way, could have sent an email about a guest complaint, emailed the GM. The GM could have just told the dishwashers, and they could either do it and then be negative, and that negativity will come out in other ways, or they quit and get fired, and you bring another guy in, and then you're just in a rotation of the same, you know, becomes Groundhog Day. And then the dishwashers never go along with the other guys because they're in a negative mood.
Wow.
You know, so it's, and then that adds labor,
wow.
and then the P&L gets heavier. And, you know, there's, like I said, I think there's a big connection between the culture and, you know, the bottom line, the numbers. If you can keep the culture good, you get a good result of the bottom line, and people are happy to be at work.
Wow. What about, you know, you talk about being steps ahead. Where does that fall in when it comes to leading an organization in your mind? Being steps ahead, thinking steps ahead, having.
I think you just have to have your hands on the business. You know, you can't just be going and letting the wheels turning and going with it, right? You ever walk into a restaurant and you see a manager and he's just dressed in a suit to the nines, ties never loose, doesn't matter if it's 1 o'clock in the morning, ties tight, suit's good, pocket square, dress shoes on. You could tell that guy's leading, right? He's probably getting paid well, so he's dressed well. He's getting respect. The experience is good. He's leading well, right? It's clear. Or sometimes you go into a restaurant, you know, you got the guy, and I'm not against this if anyone does this, but, you know, you have the guy, he's got like the sweater on, not even a nice like turtleneck, just like a sweater on with no collar under his blazer with the plain sneakers. Right? I read that guy's going with the motions. You know, he's going with the motions and trying to be comfortable. And there's nothing wrong with going with the motions, but I do think you get a different result in your restaurant of going with the motions, whereas the guy's dressed to the nine and going through. If I see someone dressed like that and the team and the servers and the shirts are pressed, the ties are, there's no stains, it makes me think kitchen is, the whole product coming out visually changes everything in my mind.
Wow.
And I think the results differ, you know?
Do you think all of this affects the guest experience at some level?
You're right. I think it does. I think it does. I think that, there's negative aspects that come up that a guest is not going to understand. If you've ever gone to a restaurant, you're supposed to be 4 people and you and your wife are there and you're waiting for the other couple, they usually will not sit an incomplete party. So now right away it's negative. Okay. They send you to the bar and you are told, they hold reservations at a grace period for 15 minutes. Well, guests are never going to understand that. The restaurant needs to keep moving forward. They have other reservations that they have to follow by the time and get that table up so that the next reservation, right? If we're a 7:30 res and we don't sit till 8, the 9 o'clock reservation who's on time is going to be waiting, right? And that's a hard game to play. But if we get sent to the bar and I get greeted right away, they give me a great drink with my change immediately. The bartender made everything perfect. He heard exactly what I wanted. My likes and dislikes. I just wanted a Coke with no lime. And he brings me a Coke with no lime in it. He's listening. Everyone's dressed well. Things are moving. It changes how you feel about it.
Wow.
Even if the other couple comes after the 15 minutes, and now if I'm told we will work you back into the rotation, I feel okay about it because they just got really good service. Sometimes you might just end up eating at the bar. It's the same with the host or the maitre d' of how they word that. Are they just saying we'll work you back in the rotation? That does not sound like it's going to happen. This is Joseph. He's going to take care of you. Let me see what's going on with my reservations. Let me get caught back up. I'm going to get you down. I think we're going to be okay. And then next, 10 minutes later, you're down. You probably wouldn't have got around at the bar anyway, but the other couple happened to be late, So the look, the wording, the assurance, to me, that all adds up.
Wow. Did you always want to be in business?
I always wanted to be in business. I never came with a restaurant background, ironically. I've never worked at a restaurant before GM. I came from nightlife. I did a lot of work with athletes, but to me, operations, it's just you're handling situations. And if you have your 4 walls set correctly, you can let the pros be at the pros of what they're a pro at. The sommelier, he knows about the wine. I don't know a lot about wine. Now, as you go, you learn, right? But at the end of the day, that's why I have the sommelier there, That's why the sommelier also does wine tastings with the servers. The servers know in our organization that I don't know a lot about wine. I own it. They know. And it makes them feel good. I need them. I need their help. That's okay. I'm taking care of everything else that's good for them. They're getting paid on time. We're insured. The restaurant's rolling. We have our supplies. The GMs are happy. The culture's good. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, And I'm leaning on you as a team member because we're working together,
Wow.
I don't want to act like I know everything. And I never came from that. I've built my career in a different way. That's all.
Drew, last question. It's really posed more to the theme of the last few seasons, because there's been a lot of uncertainty on macro side. What's your advice to people listening to this of how to approach their lives right now in this economy and in this time?
It's hard. Everyone has different situations. Again, I think you could not be happy with your job, and that's okay. Do you feel you're getting paid fairly? And do you have a plan of what you're going to want to do that makes you happy? Or maybe you have to make a decision also of, are you trying to be happy or are you trying to make more money? Find out later if those paths cross where it can be both. But everyone has different values and what they're looking for, and people have partners that can help out in other ways. So it's okay if it's not figured out at the moment. I'm sure we've all read and seen success stories where this actor who's super well known wasn't even in their first movie until their mid 40s. It's not going to happen immediately, but you just got to keep, what is your goals? And do you know every day that you're going towards that goal, whether it's working out before to clear your mind? Are you reading and studying? Are you taking a side course? Same as I said before, just because you're getting paid to do one thing right now, that doesn't define who you are. It's more of, what is your plan? And if you don't have a plan, then you got to look at, do you need a plan? Do you at least have a path where you think? Do you have a timeline at least where you don't have a plan, but you want to see where things land in the next year or two to then decide your direction? There's so many ways to answer it depending on the age, career, responsibilities, and so forth. But it's okay. I think people get caught up in the social media world, and you see pictures and videos of, people acting as if, which I am a fan of, go for it. But don't judge yourself against those things to think that you're not in a good place,
Drew, last thing, what's your Instagram handle so people can, message Coach Drew right now? This is fire.
My Instagram is _mayor of Philadelphia as one word. So _mayor of Philadelphia. It's a very old nickname, just because I used to be involved with a lot, know a lot of people. It's kind of stuck with me over the last 20 some plus years. And that's where I'm at.
Love it. Drew, thank you for coming on, and we will see you all on the next episode of the Culture Matters podcast.
Beautiful. The pleasure was all mine. Thank you.